Well, thank you all for coming tonight, and I want to dedicate our annual seminar this Cyprus Week at Theatro Technis in memory of the founder of Lobby for Cyprus, Kyriakos Christodoulou, who was forcibly displaced from his village, Agios Amvrosios, during the Turkish first invasion in 1974. I further dedicate this evening in memory of all those who lost their lives in 1974, the refugees and the forcibly displaced persons who have passed away and did not return to their towns and villages and homes. May we have a minute's silence to remember them, and also remember a good friend and much loved Famagustian, Andreas Louga, who passed away very recently. Could we all be upstanding, please? Thank you. Welcome to the annual seminar for Lobby for Cyprus in association with Famagausta Association UK. I would like to first announce the presence of some distinguished guests here tonight. We have with us His Excellency, the High Commissioner of the Republic of Cyprus, Mr. Andreas Gagouris. Good evening, Mr. Gagouris. By Zoom link, all the way from New York, the President of the International Coordinating Committee, Justice for Cyprus, PSEGA, Mr. Philip Christopher. Good evening, Philip.
Good evening. Nice to be with you.
Thank you. A friend of Cyprus and Member of Parliament, who should be present from Hendon, Dr. Matthew Offord. We have with us on the panel the President of the Famagausta Association, Dr. Vasilis Mavrou. The founder of Theatro Technis, Mr. George Avianiou, who is now 92 years old. who has never missed a seminar and is always very vocal during questions and answers. I would like to acknowledge the presence of the representatives of radio and TV from the UK and from Cyprus, and all the numerous distinguished members and leaders of our associations and organizations from our diaspora, Friends of Lobby for Cyprus, ladies and gentlemen. Chairing the seminar will be Nick Gounoupias, an executive of Lobby for Cyprus. We also have with us on Zoom the Mayor of Derinia, Andros Karayannis. Kalispera, Kyrie Dimarche. Thank you. At the end of the seminar, we will have some Greek savories and drinks. Right, we have a very full program tonight, and I shall commence our evening because Mr. Philip Christopher is extremely busy and has to go to either Congress or Senate or to the Senate. But Philip, I'm giving you the floor because the first speaker should be the High Commissioner of the Republic of Cyprus, but he's allowed me to give you the floor. And it's a good floor. Over to you, Philip. Over to you.
First, by congratulating the Republic of Cyprus, Theatro Technis that put this together along with the Famagausta Association. Let me thank the High Commissioner for giving me the floor. I'm actually leaving for Southern Jersey to meet the Minister of Defense of Cyprus, who, as you know, is in the States to sign a partnership agreement between the National Guard of Cyprus and the National Guard of New Jersey, which had won the competition to to partner with Cyprus. So as we commemorate this dark anniversary, which is 49 years after the invasion, and all of us have been involved for 49 years, it's very difficult and very dark days for all of us, both in here in the United States, the United Kingdom, in Cyprus, and hopefully all over the world. And let us hope that we won't have to commemorate 50 years next year, and hopefully there will be some progress on the Cyprus issue. I want to start by, even though it's a dark anniversary, just to mention that the progress that we have made over this past year, the relationship between the United States and Cyprus and Greece is closer than ever before. And let me just mention the 3+1 legislation that has passed the United States Congress that has brought this relationship closer together, which led to the lifting of the embargo, which is something that not only we're happy about, but also working now to extend that the permanent based on the embargo, so the Republic of Cyprus has a bit to firearms without restrictions. Let me just say that we have tremendous support in the United States Congress, and of course everyone talks about Senator Menendez, which is the leader in the Senate, but there's many others, both in the House of Representatives and the United States Senate, that have been supported. It's a difficult time, and we always try to be optimistic and to try and point the good things that are happening. But there is no way of camouflaging our disappointment and our frustration that after 49 years, Turkey is still considered to be a live ally of NATO, member of NATO, live ally of the United States, and both the United States and the United Kingdom and Europe seem to be catering to Turkey. It's a country of 85 billion, I understand that, critical geographic position, but there is no excuse for the concessions that are constantly being made to Turkey for the sake of experiencing. And this is the message that they're sending to President Biden.
Recording in progress.
And all of you are well aware that President Biden, of course, in his position of Vice President, and previous to that as Senator, he was one of our champions on the Cyprus issue. And let me get down to the point that I think that we have an opportunity. Turkey is desperate to get the F-16 fighter jets, and we are trying to tie the concession of selling the F-16 jets to Turkey, to the Cyprus issue. Beginning with the Famagusta expansion, we want them immediately to stop any further expansion to Famagusta and to comply with the resolution. That's the first condition. The second condition, of course, is permanent lifting of the embargo on Cyprus. The third condition is the resumption of negotiations, if you can go back. But that's important as well for Turkey to come to the table and stop the continuous expansion that they have. So I don't want to belabor the point, but we're in a very difficult position. I am concerned that we're allowing and reacting to Turkish needs without us putting out a better fight. I always said that in the State Department, they always call it a conflict resolution. And unless there is some kind of a conflict, there can't be a resolution. I am concerned that the Famagausta situation has gone without any kind of measures that we take against the TLC and against whether it's closing the crossings or doing something to that effect to create some kind of a conflict that would present us the opportunity to have some kind of resolution. Of course, we will have the opportunity in Cyprus when we have a conference to talk to the President, Mr. Stokidis, and I met with the Foreign Minister as well, Mr. Pompous, and I am meeting with the Secretary of Defense, Minister of Defense, and with his General Zervakis, the National Guard. So we will discuss further possibilities of really preventing this expansion in Famagausta, which is what you are highlighting. One thing I have to tell you is that we are working very hard with, in the House of Representatives and the United States Senate. There is pressure on Senator Panelists, and I put out an open letter recently, because you have to understand that the Biden administration can override the Senate and pass an emergency act to sell the F-16s to Turkey without paying attention. But the Biden administration is offering concessions to Senator Menendez, including the F-35 program to Greece, the C-130 transfers to Greece, foreign assistance to Greece of over $1 billion with low interest rates. So Greece stands to benefit quite a bit if Turkey gets the F-16. My concern is that we have to put conditions on Cyprus with this kind of a state of if it's going to happen. And of course, I pointed out in my message yesterday to the United States Congress that nothing is going to happen until October when the Turkish Parliament supposedly approves the entry of Sweden into NATO. So President Erdogan, after one election, is now trying to pacify NATO and the United States and to try to come into the relations. But as I pointed out, the S-400 missiles are in Turkey. Turkey has not stopped the overflights on Greece. They have not stopped their expansion in Famagusta, and of course the continued occupation of Cyprus. So these are the things that we are expressing, and hopefully we'll be able to put Mr. Erdogan under pressure, and his blackmail tactics hopefully not go through. So, as I always say, the work goes on and the home endures. And all of you, congratulations for continuing this fight. And I look forward to being with you on a continued basis of fighting daily motivation and continued occupation. With those few remarks, if you have questions, I'm happy to answer questions from the American point of view. Thank you. Questions.
Philip, since you are extremely busy, we usually have a question and answers at the end. I think there's one question that I just want to quickly ask, and it's something which I actually read that Menendez had mentioned regarding the F-16s, and he did say that if the F-16s were acquired by Turkey, he requires to make sure that they will not be used against Greece. Is that something which is actually a fact?
Oh, there's no question. The problem is when Turkey has ever abided by any agreement, and that's our concern, that Mr. Erdogan can promise all kinds of things until he gets the F-16. But then he violates conditions, and no one does there's no repercussions after he violates his agreements. And we can point to numerous times when Turkey has agreed on certain things and then violated both the territorial integrity of Greece and Cyprus, and we know how they behave against the Kurds in Syria. We know how they behave against our allies that were fighting ISIS, So Turkey is a country that has no credibility. And this is what we're pointing out this thing. On the other hand, the administration, of course, is anxious to strengthen NATO. And, you know, when we meet people from the administration, they said, well, one administration turned to Russia to become allies with Ukraine. And that's what we are concerned with. But a good ally has to be accountable and behave like an ally, by the principles of our Constitution. So I think we have to get the concessions up front. And whether they were use the F-16s to violate territorial integrity of Greece, that remains to be seen. But Erdogan seems to be wanted right now to come to the places of the United States. Their economy is under pressure, so they need this assistance from the United States.
Thank you, Philip. Thank you very much, Philip, and thank you for being present on our seminar. I know it's still early afternoon for you. Enjoy the rest of the day and give our very best to all the Hellenic organizations in America for all the fabulous jobs and work they're doing on behalf of our country. Thank you very much, Philip.
Thank you, and I will give the best regards to the Minister of Defense, who are on our way right now, and he will be meeting with Senator Mendes as well to discuss this point threat that out to. So,
thank you.
My best wishes to all of you. And as I said, the hope endures, and hopefully we will see the day when we return to get Canada. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Philip. Right, High Commissioner, would you please give us your government's perspective? Please, yes. Vasilis will move to the left and from the center. Yes, please.
It's actually rather strange for me to be here tonight. We're talking about Famagausta. But firstly, let me thank the organisers of tonight's event: Lobby for Cyprus, Famagausta Association, Theo, Vasili, all the participants, all of you in attendance tonight. I know Philip Christopher is no longer on with us on this event, but on a personal note, he is somebody I've known since 1982, and he is as passionate today as he was back in 1982. And it's people like Philip Christopher across the Atlantic who keep the Cyprus issue on the radar screen, as you do over here as well. I'm happy to be with you tonight. I wish it was under very different circumstances. I wish we weren't talking about 49 years tomorrow of an illegal invasion, an illegal occupation. In fact, a figure that was given by my foreign minister last night when he spoke at the APPG meeting, and some of you may have been there. We're talking about 17,992 days since the Turkish invasion. That's the length of time that we're talking about. I was a young 14-year-old. My birthday is the 21st of July. 20th of July is my mother's village feast day, to Profitu Ilia. So it's very personal. I can, as a youngster from the UK going to Cyprus on vacation, I still have the smell of the bandobulio in Varosha, blackies, souvlaki. These smells from Varosha, or from my mother's village, are still strong today, 49 years on. And I would just like to pick up on something that Philip said. Hope endures. And I think that's the message as well that we need to keep that we cannot give up hope. It doesn't matter how challenging it appears. It doesn't matter how despondent we may be with the situation. If we lose hope, if we say enough is enough, then Turkey has won. Turkey is playing the long game. So we need to keep our own efforts as strong as they've always been in your contacts with members of Parliament. Your outreach to others in the UK is vital to our efforts as a High Commission and to the government's efforts. And I think the appreciation of the President and the Foreign Minister and others of the role that each and every one of you play here in the UK has been said time and time again, and I just wish to echo that myself here. Famagausta has always been the beacon of hope for a solution of the Cyprus issue. The pain of 49 years ago has not disappeared, nor will it disappear. And we have seen...
I'm just going to bring this...
Yeah, I'm afraid my voice does not project as well as it used to.
You want to hold it? If you want?
I can do that if you want. Yeah. Is that better for everybody? Yeah. All right. Thank you. You would have thought in an amphitheatre my voice would have projected. But look, the pain that we all feel, not only on, let's say, the Cyprus issue as a whole, but if we just focus on Famagausta and Varosha at the moment, took a new and twisted turn in 2020 when President Erdogan, standing side by side with the then new Turkish Cypriot leader Tatar, announced their plans to change the status of the fenced-off area of Varosha. And indeed, the Turkish side has incrementally opened parts of the fenced-off area of Varosha. First, it opened part of a beachfront. They would say innocuous enough, but we know how it works. It's what I call creeping encroachment. Then it opened previously public buildings, followed by some roads, all in all amounting to about 3.5%. Then a new access point to the beach was constructed, and another part of the beachfront was opened, and then most recently came the announcement of a decision from the secessionist entity to open a new marina. There's no doubt that all of these run contrary to UN Security Council resolutions. And if you look at Resolution 550 or Resolution 789, there are specific references to Varosha and specific reference to Turkey's responsibility to maintain the status quo of the fenced-off area of Varosha. Turkey has said that it is going to set up a so-called consular office in Varosha, announced in January 2023. The encouragement of real estate development, among other initiatives, again, in blatant violation of UN Security Council resolutions, all of which talk about the inadmissibility of others to inhabit Varosha and calls for the transfer of Varosha to UN administration. The attempt is to create new fait accomplis. But I would just mention one point, that it's very rare to get the UN Security Council, either through a resolution or through presidential statements, to actually use the word condemn. There was a condemnation in 541, 550 UN Security Council resolutions, but when there was the announcement that parts of Varosha would be opened, the UN Security Council condemned the announcement of the opening of parts of Varosha. I make that point because it's an issue that's on the radar screen. And I think we all know here how challenging it would be if Varosha and Turkey's plans in Varosha continued on the path that they are looking to continue. And the challenges that would be to find a lasting solution of the Cyprus problem. We all know what the framework for the solution is. It's the internationally accepted one of a bizonal, bicommunal federation. President Christodoulidis, since taking over in March of this year, has stated on countless occasions his commitment to getting back to the negotiating table as soon as we can, demanding that we go back to continue from where we left off in Crans-Montana in 2017. That is the effort of the President, that's the effort of the Foreign Minister who was in New York meeting the Secretary General last week. He was in London a month ago to see Foreign Secretary Cleverly, and he was back in London yesterday for other meetings and to speak to the APPG last night. And I think for those who were present last night, it was encouraging to see the commonality of message across all party lines that spoke last night, and also the message of Lord Ahmad, who was the government spokesman last night, reiterating the framework for a solution and the UK's commitment to do whatever it could do to help to restart the negotiations. The President has also pushed to get greater engagement by the European Union to appoint an envoy, where the EU would not, of course, replace the United Nations, but would be complementary to the efforts of the UN Secretary General. And he's been around various capitals, and that is something that we are pushing, because if we look, the European Union has tools that it can use and sort of engage with Turkey. If Turkey is interested in re-engaging with the European Union, then that is one area that we have said that we would be willing to sit down to look at the whole aspects of EU-Turkey relations. But, okay, we need Turkey to be on board, Turkey to get back to the negotiating table, so we can at last end what is an illegal invasion, illegal occupation, the humanitarian issues that go with that, the refugees, the missing, those that died, the enclaved, all of those. 49 years, 49 years does not, for me, make it less of an issue. It's more of an issue today. And it's on, in my view, on the radar screen, because if we look at what's going on in the Ukraine and the international community's focus on Russia's illegal invasion and occupation of the Ukraine, something that the Republic of Cyprus condemned straight away. If we as Cyprus do not condemn an illegal occupation, invasion, who will? But what we're asking is, in the same way that the international community has exerted its energies on this issue, we expect nothing less on the Cyprus issue too. An invasion is an invasion, an occupation is an occupation. And that is what continues today in Cyprus. And again, with your help to keep this issue live here in the UK, and people like Philip in the United States and elsewhere, I would wish to come back next year, Theo, if I'm still here, okay, not to talk about a continued occupation, but to talk about a solution of the Cyprus problem. Thank you again for inviting me.
Thank you very much.
Dear host, esteemed panelists, dear friends, I would like to thank our host for organizing this event and for this effort that is focusing on Famagausta and its future. I express my sincere gratitude because the future of the Cyprus problem as a whole depends now on what will happen to our beloved city. It was not so long ago that some, maybe in good faith, were expressing fears that Famagausta will overshadow the Cyprus problem as a whole. But now we can see that it is the opposite that is taking place. Now we see that the new Turkish attack on Famagausta is taking place by the Turkish leadership as means to see the de facto partition of the island. It is an effort to make sure that there will be no other solution than the two-state solution for the Cyprus problem. And we as Famagaustians cannot accept the partition of Cyprus. We cannot accept anything else besides the solution of the Cyprus problem as a whole, because our city, Famagausta, is not only the 17% of the city that is in defense of area. Famagausta is also Gadovarosha, Aios Lukas, Aios Georgios, all the areas that are now illegally occupied, used the settled by the occupying forces. It is therefore of great importance to understand this attack on Famagausta not as another provocation and not as another empty threat. The attack that is taking place in Varosha is the implementation of the Turkish plan of creating concrete realities on the ground that will make the partition of our island irreversible. It is for this reason that the opening of the fence of area of Famagausta came hand in hand with the insistence of Turkey for a two-state solution. This is not the first attempt by Turkey to use Famagausta in this way, but the collapse of the negotiation in 2017 was used as the opportunity for the implementation of these plans. Since 2017, as Sintadar and Kudret Özesai, we are pushing to open Varosha, but it was not until 2019 when they took power in the Turkish Cypriot community that they started to put those plans in motion. Those plans were decided in Turkey, and the Turkish government coordinated every step of the opening up the first of area. This became a reality in October of 2020. Since then, we are seeing a steady and slow expansion of the Turkish use and exploitation of the fence of part of our city. Last month, the Turkish president announced a new large development that they are planning in the occupied part of the region. We cannot see these developments as separated from their plans in Famagausta and as separated from the direction they aim for the Cyprus problem as a whole. Dear friends, I declare that for us our return in a life purpose, the opening of the closed city, this disregard for the resolution of the UN Security Council of Famagausta, the decision of the EU and every concept of the international law are indication that peace has not been ensured in our country. This is what we mean when we say that the status quo is not sustainable. New negative developments and are a threat to to the 49 years of destruction. We continue to call for international support and solidarity. Last November, we were in London. Last February, in Brussels. And in April, we visit Athens. On a regular basis, we meet with foreign political leaders and members of parliament, and we call for respect of the UN and EU resolutions. At the same time, we are working endlessly to keep in touch with the new generations of refugees, because if memory fades away, so will the determination to return. And then peace will remain. Fragile. Last but not least, we are working very hard to rebuild bridges with those in the Turkish Cypriot community that share our will for reunification and peace. But all of our efforts will be in vain if we do not manage to pressure Turkey back to the negotiation table and keep them there, tooth and nail, until it is obvious to the international community that the only way for a solution of the Cyprus problem is for Turkey to change its policy for the division of Cyprus. That is why we are calling for a resumption of the negotiation from where they stopped in Crans-Montana in 2017. Our own struggle for the return from Famagusta can give the perspective of the rebirth not only of our town city, but also of our entire homeland and for all Cypriots, Greek Cypriots as well as Turkish Cypriots. Famagausta can be the key to the overall solution of the Cyprus problem, the point of consensus that will lead to the resumption of talks for a solution that frees our homeland for occupation, division and foreign interventionist rights. Solution of a bi-communal federation with political equality as described in the UN resolutions. The return of Famagausta will mean the return of peace, life and creativity to our home, the return of an optimistic prospect for all, Turkish Cypriot and Greek Cypriots.
Παιδιά της αμοχώσου της εμβαλιαζής της εκομής εγκόλια της αρσινόησαν όλοι θα επιστρέψουμε πάλι σ' αυτή τη γη. Ενώστε τώρα την τιμή, η ελπίδα ακόμα ζει, ένα μήνυμα να βγει, μια φωνή να ακουστεί, η μέρα που γίνεται καράτσι, δεν θα αρχίσει να φαγεί, ούτε του αμογόνι, του ευαγόναγι, παιδιά της αμοχώσου, της εμβαλίας γης, ούτε του αμογόνι, του ευαγόναγι, όλοι μαζί θα αρχίσουμε ξανά αυτή τη γη. Όλοι μαζί θα αρχίσουμε ξανά αυτή τη γη. Ευχαριστώ.
Yeah, now we will go to the mayor of the Rinia, Mr. Andros Karayanis. Κύριε Δήμαρχε, καλησπέρα.
Καλησπέρα σας, distinguished guests, dear speakers, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much. I would like to thank the organizers for the invitation. As you have said, I have the honor to be the mayor of the Rinia. My name is Andros Karayanis. And once again, I would like to congratulate you all for this seminar. I would like to be in London, but next time we may come and speak to each other face to face. But anyway, after Erdogan's re-election, you may have read the announcement about building further houses in the occupied area of the Rinia, as the mayor of Famagusta has just said, and develop also the Rinia's occupied coastal area, 2.5 kilometers of coastal area. This means that Turkey wants to expand. There is to expand in Cyprus and bring more Turkish people in Cyprus, either settlers or people who were born in Cyprus, young people of their age, and he wants to offer them a place to live. That's why he announced 1,200 so-called social houses in order for those people to settle down. This means that there will be a demographic change of population in the northern part of the island of Cyprus, in the occupied areas of Cyprus. And imagine that in case that 1,200 houses will be built close to the Rinia, to the barbed wire of the Rinia, to the crossing point of the Rinia, around 5,000 people will settle down close to the free area of the Rinia. Anyway, the provocation of Turkey and Erdogan in both Famagusta, Central City, and around the Rinia's occupied area indicates his future plans in the occupied area of Cyprus, which is very, very worrying. And Greek Cypriots and even Turkish Cypriots who see especially Greek Cypriots, who see their plots and their land being developed illegally by Erdogan's Turkey are of course very disappointed, and that's why many people they want to sell their land, even if we don't recommend them to sell their land in the occupied area. And just for your information, in the area of Engoni, Trigomo and Carpasia, peninsula. There is a huge development coming from Russia, Israeli, and Iranian investments. And Greek and Turkish Cypriots who strongly support the rapprochement, the bringing together of the two communities, and they strongly support the resolution to the Cyprus problem. They feel that nothing happens in the political issue. No negotiations, no dialogue since 2017. Anyway, Erdogan needs financial exchanges in order to return to the negotiating table, as the negotiating table has been mentioned before. We strongly support the efforts by the President of the Republic to have a European negotiator, but we shouldn't forget that Turkey is officially an European Union candidate state since 2005, which violates human rights of an EU country, which is Cyprus. We know that Erdogan he posed a veto against Finland and Sweden in their entry into NATO, but now as an exchange he received more EU entry facilities for Turkey's candidacy in order to open the green light in order for Finland and Sweden to enter to NATO. Anyway, time is running out for both progressive Greek and Turkish Cypriots. Almost 50 years is a very long period. The older people pass away and the memories are being lost. And I would like to focus on memories, please, because young people do not have today the same passion like their parents and their grandparents, because they were born after 1974. And just I want to open the brackets and speak about images and memories. In the Rinia, we remember that after 1974, Famagausta had been abandoned. It was a no man's land, a ghost town, as it used to be called. We were seeing the lights going off in Famagusta. Today is the other way around. We see more lights on in Famagusta. We see lots of development. We see buildings built in Famagusta. So that means Famagusta is being populated once again, and this should worry us. Unfortunately for the European Union, as I am a member of the European Committee of the Regions, unfortunately, this is my personal point of view, and this is what I experience when we visit Brussels. They are not really interested in the Cyprus issue, in the Cyprus problem. We, the mayors, the elected persons in the municipality, we always stress, focus on the Cyprus issue. The EU priorities nowadays is the EU enlargement, which includes 10 more states like Turkey, Ukraine, Albania, Bosnia and Herzegovina, and I stress Bosnia and Herzegovina and Turkey because those who didn't want Turkey to enter into the European Union, they said that we don't want Muslim countries to enter into the European Union. But in Albania and in Bosnia and Herzegovina, there are also Muslim minorities. Anyway, EU nowadays want to get rid of Russian gas and to replace it with mineral wealth coming from the West Balkans, which is much more cheaper. That's why the EU enlargement includes also the West Balkans. And just to come to an end, I feel, and I'm very worried about it, that the Cyprus problem is not an EU priority right now. The EU has other priorities like solutions to the Brexit, the COVID, the Ukrainian war, the EU enlargement, the migration, the climate change. So it is up to us to keep the faith, to continue our struggle for a reunited Cyprus, both for Greek and Turkish Cypriots and all the minorities on the island of Cyprus, both based on the decision taken and agreed in 2017 in Switzerland. Thank you very much, and I'm here in case you have any questions or any clarifications. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There will be a question and answer session once we finish all the speeches, so we look forward. I know it's a bit late in Cyprus, but hold on, wait. Thank you. Next we have a message from the MP Paralambos of Enfield South, which will be read by Nikos Kounoupias.
Thank you, Theo, and good evening, everyone. And it's lovely to see the room so full tonight. This, as Theo said at the beginning, is our annual event at Theatro Technis, where we also like to commemorate the evening to our founder, Kyriakos Christodoulou. And I'm so pleased to see his two sons here this evening. It's very, very touching. Thank you, boys, for coming.
Stand up so everyone can see you, please. Alexandros and Petros.
So I have a short message from Bambos Haralambos, who is the MP for Enfield Southgate, and it reads as follows. It is now 49 years since the Turkish invasion of Cyprus, and whilst there are many tragic stories from the invasion, the story of Famagausta is one of the saddest. 2 years ago, I had the pleasure of meeting the mayor of Famagausta, Dr. Simos Ioannou, and members of the Municipal Council of Famagausta at the Cultural Centre of the Famagausta municipality in Derinia village, where we watched a video of what Famagausta was like before the invasion. From a thriving, bustling holiday beach resort amongst the best in the Mediterranean to the ghost town that it is today. It was very moving to see the contrast. And now, 49 years on, we see Turkey trying to open up Varosha, which is a clear breach of UN Security Council resolutions, including 550 from 1984, 789 from 1992, and most recently 2587 from 2021, which condemned these actions by Turkey and called for their reversal and for Turkey to immediately transfer the area to the administration of the UN and for the return of its lawful inhabitants. Despite these calls, Turkey ignores the UN resolutions and those from the EU and continues its egregious actions with impunity. With the Turkish economy in a perilous state and with Turkey now looking to the West for support, now is the time for pressure to be applied to get Turkey back to the negotiating table so that talks can resume where they left off in Crans-Montana in 2017. And it must be made clear to Turkey that talk of partition will never be tolerated. We need to do all we can to work towards a peaceful, united and free Cyprus, and I will do all I can to support this. So that's from the MP for Enfield Southgate, Bambos Haralambos.
Thank you, Nick. Thank you very much. We thank Bambos for the message. He mentioned to me that he's currently in Athens at a conference, and that's why he couldn't attend personally tonight. Now we want to have a personal story. I'm going to call a gentleman who recently visited Famagausta, took some photos of Famagausta, and not from the fenced-off area, from inside. Kostas Georgiou, please.
Thank you. Shall I say what I heard up to now? You cover almost everything to my opinion. So anything I'm going to say now is my experience from the age of 12 we went to the high school in Famagusta, in the Gymnasium Amohostu, first one. Now, when we arrived for the first visit, me and my friend, he's 82 now, Andy, and we went on a little bus trip just outside the Dimotiko Stadium, if you know where it is. And as we drove through, he took us up to Galamnes before along the John Kennedy Avenue, and we reached there. Everything to me, it was shocked because it was so dilapidated. Because I remember them in 1974, I arrived in Cyprus just when really everything was lovely, running around and experiencing it. But as you look up to the sky and you see all those buildings, it really shocks you where we are today. And we arrived at Galamnes just there before Crescent. I think everybody, you must know Crescent. And that's where, again, you stand on the sea there and you see, just looking towards Constantia. Even the Turkish now, they painted Constantia in blue and white. They are doing everything possible to satisfy and attract the Cypriots to go there and spend time, never mind the tourist. In one way, it's good to go and see exactly what happened, because if you look, we come back and then we got off the bus and we walked along just Demokratias. On the right, it was the Dimotiko Park. Now, when you turn your head and you look at the high school, we have seen two massive flags, Turkish flag and the TNT. I tell you what, it was the shockiest thing. I looked right, and the next thing I found myself scratching myself, the whole hand of mine, and blood was pouring out, and I fall down. It's just a shock, I think. I don't know. I was stupid enough, I didn't look down. It just stayed.
Photographs are being shown behind you. Do you want to go through them, perhaps?
Yeah. Maybe if
you stand
I stand over
you can
there.
actually,
Sorry about that.
because these are your photos that you
We
took.
took those pictures as we were going along.
Yes.
Now, this is King George Hotel here. You remember, it was one of the first hotels of Famagusta, but this is the Academy of Music, opposite the park. And it's starting to falling apart as well, and a lot of crowds there. Nobody crosses over the other side to the left. And here is where we used to get the newspaper, the ice cream, everybody, Demos. That was the most popular thing, everybody used to cross. And just as you could see how they overgrown. Here was one of the house where the Olympic Airways, I think it was, if I remember that, it is Olympic Airways. I'm getting old now, I'm 75 by the way, so I can't remember them exactly as it was. But that's what they really, you stop and look, it's still there. And as you walk up towards, if you remember Vurkas making clothes and everything, Barnabas cheese cakes he used to make, the most popular. And here, I think, is the ones opposite the Salamina. I think, I'm not quite sure, the Salamina Football Club is just across the road on the triangle. Here is a Vasilio. I can't remember, I think Vasilio. Yeah, sorry, that's all right. But you could see the state of the buildings, and you carry on. I remember they were sparkling down there. Pavlos Kyriakos, you know that, everybody will see it, I remember it, the state of it. It's all there, locked up. Some have been looted. Here exactly is the road that leads to my house. It's next to Iron, Esperia, and it's a road that leads along, and it goes up to Kliniki or Jordanis, and that's how bad it is. One of my friends tried to go down there, and the police called him back. He says, he was a Turkish Cypriot, he says, hey my friend, what are you going to try to do? Try to get me into trouble? they're watching over there, they're going to punish me. He said, come back. So he did come back. So we never really cross over to see any further. But it's clearly a dilapidation. This is Asperia. If you remember it, this is where the Galamies is, and you look towards that. The last hotel down there is Constantia. So you look into towards Bogazi, so in other words. Everything they got already, the other Turkish people. And I don't know exactly how we're going to deal with our problem. I think we need to educate the people, even the youngsters, to take our children over the road, see what it was, what we miss, what we had. If we do not educate the next generation, we are getting old. And look at the color of the sea. Beautiful. You can see your face in it. We started down there being young, but now we're getting older. And you could see the architecture, different people, different sizes, different quality. The good works, they're looking good along the seafront. Some of the buildings are not brilliant anymore. And we're down near Fadiron now. The Fadiron now they changed it, they knocked it all down and they modified it along there. And you can see, there it is, the old view from here. This is from Fadiron looking towards Alasia. On the right is just the King George's Mystery on that picture, but it's fallen down now. These are some friends of Cyprus. We were arranged with Doros and the Friends of Cyprus conservatives. We have taken on a fact-finding mission in the 14th of November 2015. They're all there, they remain friends to this day. We took them to Famagausta, Fadiron, Bogazi, Patridi, Leonariso, Vasili, Gomayalu, Rizzo, Garpaso. So we stay there, we explain the thing, and they remain today, even all of them friends to our Cyprus and the support we received. It's a pity one of them is dead, David Davis. He was really one of the best men. He was so gentle, but he's been killed, as you know, if you watch the news. But can I just say, take this opportunity, hopefully, it might be the last time, to our opinion. We're getting old now. We need to go prepare and then find solutions. No excuses. Sit down, get ready, and do your best you can. That's what we can pray for everybody. But the masters of the policies, what's going to happen? They are the British here. We must stay with the British, help them, advise them as best we can. Please be in touch with them and the Europeans. Thank you.
Thank you, Costa. Thank you very much. There will be another personal story later on as well. Now we will come to one of the speakers from Cyprus who unfortunately today cannot be with us live. He is actually with the President and with other dignitaries at an event in Cyprus. But he has sent his message, which will be read out by Nikos Kounoukias. This is from Andreas Morfidis.
Thank you, Theo. Andreas Morfidis is the chairman of the board of directors of the Institute of Demographic and Migration Policy of Cyprus, also vice president of the Cyprus Research Centre. And councillor of the municipality, I've just been told. Thank you. Of Famagusta municipality. Thank you. So he obviously has a very, very direct and personal connection with the wonderful city. And I will read it out. It will take about 5 minutes. To begin with, I wish to express my warm greetings from Cyprus and acknowledge your praiseworthy initiative, as well as congratulate you on organising this seminar of significant importance, entitled Famagausta, Shattered Lives, thanking you at the same time for inviting me for this brief address. The sensitive and important issue of the entire town of Famagausta has all along been a special and crucial aspect of the multi-dimensional Cyprus issue as a tragic result of the flagrant and illegal Turkish invasion of 1974, leading to the illegitimate and vicious capture and continuous occupation of 38% of the territory of the Republic of Cyprus. At this point, I wish to state that the town of Famagusta entails a number of challenging, exclusive and diverse problematic issues summarised as follows. 1. During the advance of the Turkish Attila troops, the town of Famagusta was not captured and occupied by the Turkish invading military force, but was finally occupied due to the fact that the town was unfortunately abandoned by its inhabitants as a result of an atmosphere of terror instigated by the Turkish Air Force with its continuous air raids against the town on the 15th of August 1974. The Cyprus National Guard forces defending the town of Famagusta were forced to retreat to the southern areas of Cyprus following the military commands by officers of the Greek junta regime who had overthrown a democratic government of Greece after the coup d'etat of 21st of April 1967. As a result of the retreat of the Cyprus National Guard forces in Famagusta, the Turkish army advanced and progressively captured and occupied the whole town, apart from an area of 16.73% of the total municipal boundaries of Famagusta. This area was put under the protection and control of the United Nations Army. Here, I wish to point out that a very significant aspect regarding the fate of Famagusta is clearly reflected in the United Nations Security Council resolutions. Resolutions 550 and 789, which clearly provide for the return of the entire town of Famagusta to its legal inhabitants, independently of the comprehensive final solution of the Cyprus issue. For the provocative non-compliance to the above-mentioned resolutions, the responsibility clearly lies with both the United Nations and especially as a result of the continuous and persistent Turkish intransigence, which follows a repetitive policy on the Cyprus issue with an ulterior aim of continuing a geopolitical and geostrategic control over the Republic of Cyprus. Turkey has implemented the systematic policy of colonizing the occupied part of Cyprus. The policy, which ultimately includes the perennial Turkish aims regarding the Republic of Cyprus, combined with the expulsion of the Greek Cypriot inhabitants of the area, destruction of cultural heritage, and a legal change of all the geographical names of the occupied part of Cyprus, is clearly aimed by the Turkish leadership in the years to come at erasing all that was Greek and Christian for centuries and Turkifying the island. Unfortunately, responsibilities to a certain level for the absence of required political moves for the Cyprus issue, and especially for the issue of Famagusta, also lie with the political leadership of Cyprus after 1974, which have neither demanded nor pursued with the requisite determination and political methodology the materialization of those important UN resolutions regarding Famagusta, through a targeted, well-prepared with stable strategy and judicious tactics which will better ensure our desirable expected results, especially regarding the problem of Famagusta at this stage. The Turkish government is in full cooperation with the illegal Turkish Cypriot pseudo-state, which they fully control, and which was proclaimed in the occupied part of Cyprus on 15 November 1983. The pseudo-state, with the continued support of Turkey, continues undisturbed to violate the United Nations and European Union resolutions with regard to Famagusta, and have illegally and are progressively opening step-by-step various areas of the enclosed part of the town, provoking in this way the feelings of the Cypriot people and especially of the citizens of Famagusta, and at the same time they aim to render those areas functional for inhabiting them with Turkish citizens, including those from mainland Turkey, in full violation of all UN resolutions. I sincerely hope that your seminar of significant importance will enlighten all aspects of the Famagausta tragedy and will exert all necessary pressure, mainly towards British politicians, for rendering justice and help towards the return of the town to its legal inhabitants as soon as possible, based on the UN Security Council resolutions 550 and 789, as well as resolutions adopted by the European Union and in line with international human rights regulations. In conclusion, I wish you every success in all your seminar work and deliberations, and I anxiously look forward to be informed of the results of your praiseworthy efforts, for which once more I wish to express my warm congratulations. So that's from Andreas Morfidis. Thank you very much.
All right, we have a message from another Member of Parliament, Teresa Villiers, from Chipping Barnet. Teresa would like me to read out a short message, which was sent to me through Loros Pastasidis. I am delighted to send my best wishes to the annual seminar for Cyprus, hosted by Lobby for Cyprus and the Famagusta Association in the UK. I am sorry that I cannot be with you tonight, but I remain steadfast in my support for your campaign for a free and united Cyprus. I will always support your efforts to achieve negotiated settlement to reunite the island on the basis of a federal state with a single international personality and single citizenship, with its territorial integrity safeguarded. I have been clear that the third country guarantees or rights to military intervention have no place in any future settlement. I will always speak up for the right of Cyprus to control its own exclusive economic zone. And I will always promote close links of friendship and commerce between Cyprus and the UK. Thank you for all the help and support I have received from the British Cypriot community in my 24 years in elected office. That's from Teresa Villiers. Thank you. Yes. Next, we have all the way from Athens in Greece, Dr. Klearchos Kyriakidis, who you all know was here in the UK and very fond and supporter of Lobby for Cyprus. And a member of Lobby for Cyprus. Well, no, you're wrong. He's not.
Wasn't he a member?
No.
Well, I make
Yes,
him a member.
you make him a member, yes. Allow me. Claire here, over to you. Oh, we can't hear you.
Good evening. Can you hear?
Yes. Yes, we can.
Well, good evening. First of all, can you see the screen? Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Good. Can I begin by thanking the organisers for inviting me to participate in today's event. I'd like to extend an especial greeting to the family of Kyriakos Christodoulou, who first welcomed me into the arms of Lobby for Cyprus a good 22 or 23 years ago now. I also want to extend special greetings to George Evianiou, the founder of Theatro Technis. My father, Agonising, sends him his very best regards. I've been given 15 minutes, and I want the chair to tell me when I've reached 14 minutes so that I can grind to a halt promptly. I'm going to try and advance 3 arguments over the next 14 minutes or so. The first argument is that Famagausta, in common with much of the Republic of Cyprus, constitutes a massive crime scene. It's a crime scene which has been subjected to systemic impunity, and it's a crime scene which has been subjected to a process of Orwellism, reminiscent of some of the pages within 1984, the dystopic novel by George Orwell. So that's my argument. I want to just make a quick declaration of interest before I launch into my analysis to try and support the arguments that I'm advancing. I'm a dual citizen of the Republic of Cyprus, where I have roots, and the United Kingdom where I was born. My roots in the Republic of Cyprus stretch into various places, including Turkish-occupied Pedra in Nicosia district and Turkish-occupied Lisi in Famagausta district. I'm an academic by profession, but since 2012 in a purely voluntary capacity, I've acted as an independent academic consultant to Republic of Cyprus in London. I stress that anything that I say this evening is purely personal and nothing whatsoever to do with any organisation with which I am or have been affiliated. The starting point is that Turkey did not invade Cyprus for the first time in 1974. Turkey invaded for the first time in 1570, and they invaded and re-invaded over the next few months until they completed the occupation of the then Venetian-owned island of Cyprus in August 1571, following a brutal siege of Famagausta. And we know from one of the official historian of the Venetian Republic that on the 4th of August 1571, the city of Famagausta was left free to the Turks, but as soon as they entered, they began to use all kinds of violence towards the citizens. We must never forget the cruelties and the barbaric practices which were meted out in 1570 and 1571 to enable Turkey to conquer the then Venetian-owned island of Cyprus. It fell under Ottoman rule, the island of Cyprus, including Famagausta, until 1878. The British were there from 1878 until 1960, although in 1914 the British annexed the island of Cyprus. And in 1960, the Republic of Cyprus was established subject to the retention of two British sovereign base areas as a result of what I call the camouflaged partition of the island of Cyprus in 1960. We must never forget the demographic realities that prevailed in the 1940s and 50s, which led to the campaign for self-determination with the then aim of achieving enosis with Greece. According to the official British census carried out in 1956, 78.2% of the population of the then Crown Colony of Cyprus described itself as Greek Orthodox. This is the phraseology of the British of the day. Before the phrases Greek Cypriot and Turkish Cypriot were popularised by the British and planted into the psyche of the people of Cyprus without the people actually realising that those are British colonial labels. 17.5% of the population described itself as Muslim Turkish, and 4.3% described itself as adhering to one of the other religions, i.e. not Greek Orthodox Christianity or Islam. The official census carried out in the Republic of Cyprus on the 11th of December 1960 showed that 70.4% of the population of what was called then Famagausta town were Greeks, so by now the phraseology had changed and it was reflected of the phraseology of the Constitution, the segregationist Constitution of 1960. Turks in Famagausta constituted 17.6%. British, partly because of the nearby Ayers and Bolas military base, constituted 10.53%. The Constitution of 1960 expressly refers to Famagausta in one place, but in the context of the then proposal to create segregated town councils, hence the reference to prospective separate municipalities in Famagausta and elsewhere. That's Article 173 of the Constitution, and that forms part of the backdrop to the intercommunal crisis of November 1963 and the outbreak of intercommunal violence in December 1963, which resulted in the first of the post-1960 Turkish attacks on the Republic of Cyprus. I just want to now, can I just make sure that you can see me, or rather hear me and see the screen?
The screen is not totally clear. We cannot see on the left side the beginning of the sentences. It's about a quarter of it can be seen. It's not possible.
Okay, not to worry. I'll make the slides available to everyone after the event. I'm only going to whiz through them in the limited time left. The point I want to stress here is that post-1956 Turkish strategy envisaged Famagausta falling within an ethnically cleansed northern zone which would be under Turkish control. That was a Turkish strategy from 1956 with the Mehat-Erim plan that was given to the then Prime Minister of Turkey, Menderes, and the idea was updated in 1964, and we know this from declassified documents and United Nations reports from the period. For example, on the 2nd of December 1964, the US ambassador in Nicosia wrote to the State Department and explained to them what the Turks meant by their support of federation, and the American ambassador said federation means the geographic separation of most of the two communities with boundaries cutting Famagausta and Nicosia and running west to Kokina. That is the Turkish Cypriot meaning of federation. The reported Gallo Plaza, the then UN mediator, to the UN Secretary General on the 26th of March 1965 reinforces that the Turks in Ankara and their acolytes in Nicosia had in mind a partition running from the northwest of the Republic of Cyprus to Nicosia and from Nicosia down to Famagausta. They had in mind the creation of a federal republic with a Turkish zone in the north, a Greek zone in the south, a fragile federal umbrella, and two states, one Greek in the south, one Turkish in the north, with Famagausta falling within the northern zone, the proposed northern zone. It's all set out in UN Security Council document S6253, which you can trace on the UN Digital Library. And as I said, I'll circulate the slides afterwards so that you can check that what I'm saying is accurate. This is, of course, what the UK government is quite rightly saying in relation to the Ukraine conflict. The law of armed conflict must be respected, and the principles of the law of armed conflict, such as the principle of humanity and the principle of proportionality, must be respected. But all the evidence points to the conclusion that these principles were not respected when the coup took place in 1974, and then when Turkey invaded the Republic of Cyprus on the 20th of July, and then re-invaded the Republic of Cyprus on the 14th of August. Famagausta was in the firing line, and what appeared to be war crimes and crimes against humanity were inflicted on Famagausta. Famagausta was not occupied as a result of the first Turkish invasion on the 20th of July, but the British and the American governments had intelligence pointing to the prospect of a second Turkish invasion if Turkey was not able to secure its demands at the Geneva conference that was established in the lead-up to the 14th of August. And I'll just give you one example of many declassified British and American documents that are now in the public domain. One British intelligence report confirmed or indicated that there was a Turkish army plan to begin another military operation on the 20th of August. It was wrong by 6 days, but where it was almost right was when it added the plan was designed to take over all the areas above the line drawn 5 miles east of Morphu and through the Nicosia area and on to Famagausta. And the Turkish minister made clear that if the Turks didn't achieve this line through negotiations, they were prepared to use force to achieve it. And note here, Famagausta was in the eyes of the Turkish state from the 1960s, right up until the eve of the second invasion. The Turks did not occupy and ethnically cleanse Famagausta at the last minute, as some people, unfortunately, mistakenly assume. The Geneva conference happened on the 13th of August 1974. The Turks demanded a northern zone to cover 34% of the area of Cyprus. This was not accepted. 24-hour, I think it was a 48-hour delay was requested. It was rejected, and Turkish armed forces launched their second invasion of the Republic of Cyprus. This time without the excuse of the coup, because the coupist regime in Nicosia collapsed, as had the sponsor, the junta, in Athens. So we're talking here about what appears to be a crime against peace contrary to the Nuremberg Charter of 1945, and as a consequence of that crime against peace, further war crimes and crimes against humanity were inflicted to achieve the occupation by Turkey of 36% of the north of the Republic of Cyprus, and that equates to 57% of the coastline of the Republic. And in total, according to the UN, official UN estimates, 205,000 citizens of the Republic of Cyprus were displaced. The British, of course, did not exercise their right to take action under the Treaty of Guarantee, and they didn't honour their undertaking to guarantee the independence, territorial integrity and security of the Republic of Cyprus. The United Nations did not activate Chapter 7 of the UN Charter, and as a result, Turkey was able to get away with it, and in addition, Turkey was able to benefit from a culture of impunity. In addition, and this is critical, Turkey was able to benefit from a post-1974 policy of appeasement, which was predicated on the assumption that Turkey would evolve into a liberal democracy, would be heading in the direction of the then European Economic Community, and that Turkey, through being appeased, would offer concessions in return to enable a solution, in inverted commas, to be achieved. What actually happened was that the West surrendered its principles and its values. It surrendered the idea of the people in the singular, and it accepted the concept of two communities in the plural owing their origins to the Ottoman division between Muslims and non-Muslims. And what the West also did, and when I talk about the West, the ones who were chiefly responsible were the UK and the UN, they accepted the idea that the consequences of criminality can be legalised through an agreement which rests upon the demands of the aggressor. So that's why the United Nations Security Council has accepted the idea of a so-called bi-commune, bi-zone federation, which is in line with the pre-invasion strategy of Turkey.
Thank you.
What makes this even more unconscionable is that the idea of a bi-commune, bi-zone federation rests on the idea that each of the two communities would not only have, but be guaranteed to have a majority of the population and the majority of the land ownership in its respective area. That is an idea that has been endorsed by UN Security Council 750. They've done it indirectly by supporting that idea as set out in the report of the Secretary General. Famagausta, let me just finish with just a few words on Famagausta. Can I just ask the chair how long do I have left, and then I'll...
About 4 minutes.
Thanks very much. 4 minutes. I just remind everybody that Famagausta is known as Famagausta in the Constitution, the segregation of the Constitution of the Republic of Cyprus, dating back to 1960. It was written and published and brought into force in the English language, and the name Famagausta in English is embedded within the Constitution. What Turkey has done since 1974 is that it's arbitrarily renamed Famagausta from Magusa, which is the Turkish name for it, into Gazi. And if one has a look at the meaning of the word Gazi in any dictionary, such as the Oxford Dictionary of Late Antiquity or the Oxford English Dictionary, one can see that it's associated with Islamism, if not also jihadism. The UN Security Council has issued a series, I'll come to them now, the UN Security Council has issued a number of resolutions that do not refer to Famagausta, but to the Barosha. In fact, they started off in 1977 by referring to New Famagausta, and New Famagausta metamorphosed in a rather Orwellian fashion into Barosha, which is the phrase that's found in UN Security Council Resolution 550, and the idea here is for Barosha to be transferred to the administration of the UN. Now, it's actually a defective idea because if one goes to Bila, for example, or other parts of the buffer zone which are under UN administration, one can see that the UN has failed abysmally to enforce the rule of law. That's partly because of the implicit mandate, but it's also because the UN doesn't have the willingness to enforce international humanitarian law and other areas of law within the buffer zone. So the idea really was a defective one from its very beginning, but there we go, that was the idea. A couple of other points let me just emphasise with reference to the Security Council resolutions that unfortunately many Famagustans have latched onto because they refer to Varosha. The first is that these resolutions, and they include 774 and 789, they endorse the idea in a roundabout way through the reports of the Secretary General that in the event of a settlement, the city of Famagusta will be partitioned one way or the other, with the Turks retaining control of the port and much of the northern part of Famagusta. What those Security Council resolutions also do is they support the idea that in the event of a solution, 55% of the coastline would remain in the hands of the Turks. 55% of the coastline. The Resolution 789 is the most prominent of these resolutions, and it's the one that endorses this map that I'm showing on the screen now, and that map evolved into the... in fact, that map, by the way, from 1992, is largely based on a Turkish map presented in 1981 by Mr. Denktaş, and it was the map that eventually found its way into the ill-fated Annan Plan of 2004. And you can see here, even though there was the idea of having a federation hovering above two states, this is what the Annan Plan was promoting, a two-state solution, albeit under a loose federal umbrella. So what we're really doing in these negotiations that have run off over the years is we're pushing the Turkish agenda. We're pushing the pre-1974 Turkish agenda of having two communities, two zones, two states, and one very fragile and weak federal umbrella at the top. Finally, I will have to give enormous credit here to Lobby for Cyprus for its investigative work 2.5 years ago. They went in search, Lobby for Cyprus, I was involved in this behind the scenes, and I'll acknowledge it here, but it was the others who were in the driving seat. What Lobby for Cyprus tried to do was to find out where Varosha is, geographically, if it exists, what is its legal status, if any, and perhaps most importantly of all, where is Famagausta, or rather, where is the geographical ambit of the municipality of Famagausta, Anostos in Greek. The director of the Department of Plans and Surveys in the Ministry of the Interior of the Republic of Cyprus kindly provided this map that you can see on the screen, and you can see that it's so expensive. Forgive me. Okay. Well, what I'm showing on the screen is that an area which covers 6.28 kilometres according to the Department of Lands and Surveys. That's what we mean by the fenced-off area, or areas in the plural. 6.28 kilometres. Famagausta municipality in total covers 37 square kilometres. And the problem that we've had in recent years, unfortunately, is that those 6.2 kilometres have overshadowed not just the remaining 31 or so square kilometres of Famagausta, but they've overshadowed the whole of the occupied area. Now, I've just got to stress here the map that shows the geographic scale of Famagausta municipality and the limited fenced-off area is a map that has been supplied by the Department of Lands and Surveys of the Republic of Cyprus, and we thank them for providing the map. Lobby for Cyprus tried to obtain this map like this and details as to the geographical scope of Varosha from the UK Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office. They wrote back on the 4th of December 2020 to establish that the information requested is not held by the FCDO. A similar request was put to to the Minister of Defence. The Minister of Defence of the UK responded on the 14th of December 2020 to say the same thing. They had no information on the geographical extent of Famagusta municipality or the geographical extent and location of Varosha. Very hard to believe that is what the UK government has said. And the United Nations in Nicosia responded by shielding behind the privileges and immunities that the UN is protected by under international law. So there's something rather odd, to put it mildly, about this place that has been described as Varosha, but the UN and the UK are reluctant to actually discuss in any detail. So I'm just going to come to an end by reminding everybody that I think this has been said earlier, so I'll just echo what's been said. President Erdogan of Turkey is embarked on a campaign to exploit what he calls the closed maras. Maras being the Turkish word for Varosha. And he's going there tomorrow, or he's going to the Turkish-occupied north tomorrow. Let me just finish with two thoughts. Firstly, Famagausta is occupied, it's ethnically cleansed, it's persecuted, but it's only one part of the occupied area, and we mustn't forget places such as Gerinya, Lawful, and Carpathia, which tend to be eclipsed, partly because of the political clout of the Famagustaans, and partly because of the size of the Famagausta municipality. We must never forget the remainder of the occupied area. We repeatedly hear about international humanitarian law and international criminal law. In my view, we can never have a settlement unless we have an international criminal tribunal for Cyprus, which goes back to 1963 and investigates and prosecutes international crimes committed in the Republic of Cyprus since 1963. We must never forget that Turkey has failed to become a state party to key instruments of international law, including the 1982 UN Law of the Sea Convention, and to use an example that's in the news at the moment, the 2008 Convention on Cluster Munitions. And finally, and this takes me to my area, one of the areas of academic interest that I have, Turkey is busily building a strategic nuclear axis with Russia. It's so far been limited to the construction of the nuclear power plant 110 kilometers north of Nicosia. The politicians in Greece and Cyprus are reluctant to talk about this in public, but it must never be forgotten that this nuclear power plant is due to become operational with the first of its 4 nuclear reactors sometime over the next few months. And British military forces in the island of Cyprus, including the Republic of Cyprus, US military forces in Chile, and other British and American forces in the Eastern Mediterranean are going to be at risk. Turkey's also building an alliance with other countries with questionable human rights records, such as Iran and Pakistan. I'll leave it there.
Yeah, good afternoon. Thank you very much. We need to...
Parliament for Southgate. He's currently the Prime Minister's Deputy Special Envoy for Freedom of Religion or Belief. And his message is, my apologies for not being with you this evening due to another commitment, but my heart remains with Famagusta, which sadly remains a beacon of injustice and violation of international human rights. As the world's attention is drawn to other countries under occupation, we should not allow the intolerable to be tolerated. As the international community remembers the 75th anniversary of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights later this year, let it not be forgotten that Cyprus, highlighted grievously by the effective annexation of Famagusta, is a victim of human rights violations and a continued gap in international justice and accountability. As I have said before, the Cyprus problem is and should be a humanitarian and human rights problem, seen visibly and continually in the lack of basic freedoms such as the freedom of worship and destruction of cultural heritage. It needs Cypriots and non-Cypriots to continue to stand up for those basic, fundamental and universal rights on behalf of Cypriots and us all. Thank you to David.
At all times for the city, Varosha and Amohostos. The official name in English of the city at the later stage was Famagusta. With the British takeover, Famagausta regained its significance as a port and an economic center, and its development was specifically targeted in British plans. From independence in 1960 to the Turkish invasion of Cyprus of 1974, Famagausta developed as a tourist and entertaining center, becoming one of the most popular resorts in Europe, and certainly one of the most glamorous. During the second phase of the Turkish invasion of Cyprus, on 14th August 1974, Famagausta's entire Greek Cypriot population had fled the city and took cover from air bombardment and surrounding fields, and later on to refugee camps. Unlike other parts of the Turkish captured areas of Cyprus, which were illegally inhabited more or less immediately after the Turkish military invasion, Famagausta wasn't. Famagausta wasn't in the initial Turkish plans to be taken. So the Turkish authorities were waiting for the negotiations to be completed and return the city to its inhabitants. In the absence of an agreement, the United Nations Security Council issued Resolution 550 in 1984, asking the Turkish side not to inhabit Famagausta. But instead, the Turks started doing exactly the opposite. A small part of the city, representing 18% of the land, was fenced off by the Turkish army, refusing any visitors or legitimate residents to return. Their plan was to spread a confusion of the name used in the resolutions on Famagausta, where the name of the city was referred to as Varosha, which was correct but not the more formal names for either Amohostos or Famagausta. Turkey was asked to implement Resolution 550, as I said before, in 1984, which, between others, states that it considers attempts to settle any part of Varosha by people other than its inhabitants as inadmissible, and calls for the transfer of this area to the administration of the United Nations. Instead, Turkey went ahead and illegally accommodated Turkish settlers in nearly 82% of the city's area, claiming that Varosha is a small 18% of the city, which they fenced off. Turkey masterminded this misrepresentation that tricked the United Nations envoys and went along with that, creating a very useful defense weapon in an effort to make Resolution 550 obsolete and weak. The issue of Varosha distortion was discussed in the House of Commons meeting on Famagausta in 1995 by Edward O'Hara, was the person that puts this across, revealing this obscenity by Turkey. The question persists, why our side hasn't done anything about this problem? The other issue that has been referred to many times was the lost opportunities that the Greek Cypriot side had in achieving an agreement with the Turkish side in safeguarding the return of Famagausta back with very little or no real concessions. Referring to just one example, in Nikos Rolandis' explanation that in 1978, President of United States of America Jimmy Carter's Special Envoy for Cyprus, Clark Clifford, submitted a plan for Cyprus on behalf of the United States, Canada, and Britain. The plan was based on the 1977 high-level agreements between President Makarios and the Turkish Cypriot leader Rauf Denktaş. The 12-clause plan converted the unitary state of 19 1960 into a federation, provided for territorial adjustments and the withdrawal of foreign troops. It provided for the return, reopening and restoring of Varosha, meaning Amohostos, of course, with foreign funds. This was in 1978. The plan aimed in returning land to the Greek Cypriots with compensation for those who might not want to go back to their homes and properties. Cyprus would be demilitarized, which meant the withdrawal of Turkish troops, apart from a small contingent in accordance with 1960 independence treaties. President Spyros Kyprianou at this time rejected the plan again, and Nikos Rolandis referred further to 7 or 8 additional plans to return Famagausta back to its lawful inhabitants, but all the plans were rejected by our side. Another problem that has been widely discussed among the Cypriot refugees, and especially legitimate residents from Famagausta, is a committee for compensating Greek Cypriots in the occupied part of Cyprus. Η Επιτροπή Ακίνητης Περιουσίας. This committee proved to be a very negative remedy to the refugee problems, taking into consideration the recent developments of the sale of hotels in Famagausta and other properties, and it is understood that this committee became a Trojan horse for compensation seekers, where in disguise assist private buyers and investors, Turkish or others, to buy their properties instead. The Turkish state's most recent display of contempt for international law was their unilateral decision to open the first part of Famagausta city with the intention of making the city habitable and to attract illegal Turkish settlers. In addition to that, and contrary to the United Nations Security Council resolutions and directions, the Turkish authorities invited the legal residents of Famagausta to go back to their homes and businesses under Turkish administration, and shortly afterwards made deceitful attempts to persuade those same Greek Cypriots to sell their properties to the occupying Turkish authorities. Further, it is a well-known fact that Turkey had started residential building developments in the occupied territory of Greek Cypriot land. There are over 10,000 apartments built in the occupied Famagausta city and district. More recently, there was an announcement by the Turkish administration that around 1,250 apartments accommodating more than 3,000 illegal settlers from the Turkish mainland would be built at the buffet zone outside the Rinya village up to Agios Memnonas district, effectively surrounding Famagausta city with a ring of illegal settlements. Furthermore, Turkish President Erdogan is making attempts to open up Famagausta city's port, contrary to United Nations Security Council resolutions. The Turkish president has also announced the installation of a military base in the occupied part of Cyprus for the operation of drones, destabilizing further the already turbulent East Mediterranean area. Needless to say that these actions by Turkey threaten to sabotage any future solution for peace in Cyprus that would potentially unite the island. The question is, where has the Greek Cypriot side gone wrong? Who is to be blamed? In most cases, the Greek Cypriot side ignored threatening situations, and in others, it stayed compliance. For example, it has been suggested by foreign envoys such as the United States of America ambassador in Nicosia, John Koenig, who suggested that the people of Famagausta should be ready to return under the Turkish Cypriot administration, and our side left these remarks unanswered. Furthermore, our own side, through our ex-negotiator Andreas Mavroyannis, admitted that the first part of Famagausta was not going to be discussed as a confidence-building measure, but instead it would be part of an overall solution. While the Mayor Kalanos complained silently that this wasn't right, the same silence was kept when the Turkish authorities experimentally opened up the beach from Ayos Memnonas and had access to hotels which accommodated Turkish army officers. This was also the case when Kotret Ozersay opened up a looted hotel in Famagusta and used it for conference in discussions around of how to use the fenced off area of Famagusta by Turkish businessmen and others. No comment and no action was taken by our side. There was no comment and no action from our government when Turkish people attended the opening of the fenced part of Famagusta, celebrating with their Turkish flags. Even at Erdogan's illegal visit at the Famagusta fenced area, calling it picnic, there was not a serious complaint. Instead, there was a demonstration on the occupied site by Turkish Cypriots led by Mustafa Akinci. It is important to know that while all this was going on, our political elites of all the political parties, members of parliament, MEPs, the mayor of Famagusta and the government of Cyprus itself did very little to stop it or to challenge the Turkish plans for Famagusta. The questions are still there as to why international resolutions on Famagusta were not materialized, and why we haven't shown real willingness in demanding from the United Nations, the European Union, and even NATO our human rights. The suggestion is that immediately steps should be taken in stopping Turkey's actions in Famagusta, such as the European Parliament should be persuaded to do more on Cyprus now, and as a matter of urgency, should pass resolutions on Famagusta and Cyprus imposing sanctions on Turkey. The same should be done with the United Nations and other international organizations. The Republic of Cyprus government must insist that Resolution 550 of 1984 should be applied, allowing the legitimate inhabitants of Famagusta to be resettled in the city. Finally, projects that can assist in confidence-building measures in Famagusta should be put as a priority, involving both communities and gaining therefore trust, togetherness, and financial prosperity. I'm not going to discuss these suggestions because we haven't got the time.
Thank you.
And I'll stop there. Thank you so much.
That's very good. That's very, very good. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vasily. Thank you very much. Finally, we have Dr. Theodora Christou, who is one of our panelists, and unfortunately she's not well enough to be here with us. But Theodora, you have the floor, and it's going to be very short, I believe you said.
It will be, and hopefully the internet will last, because it's going offline on a piece of equipment in my house. So if I disappear, I apologize in advance. So really, I think Leopold has covered a lot of what I was going to cover, and I want to thank every one of the speakers that have spoken, because conveniently what I'm about to say will in effect act as a summary for all the good words that have been shared with us today. So as Leopold mentioned, we ask the question, where is Varosha? And if you pause and think about your answer for a moment, where would you say Varosha is? And how do you know that's where it is? And who told you that's where it is? And what evidence are you relying on to say that Varosha is where you think it is? Is it just the fenced-off ghost town of Famagusta? Is it the new Famagusta town? Do you refer to it all of Famagusta as Varosha? Is it Famagusta, Amogosto, Varosi? Is Varosi and Varosha the same thing? The truth is that having asked so many people, the answer depends on who you ask and how much they know about the history of Cyprus, which both Vasily and Leopold and others have already gone gone through. So why is it important that we actually know the answer to this question? As we've been told, Varosha has been placed on the table numerous times as a bargaining tool, and with calls from individuals, not surprisingly Famagustans, who are keen to return for the Republic of Cyprus to accept Varosha back. Setting aside for now the significant and irreversible negative impact of accepting Varosha, what we have sought to do is mark out where Varosha is. And despite our research, we've been unable to actually find a single map which plots where Varosha is. So we thought that this piece of research was really important for national security and for the national interest of the Republic of Cyprus as a whole. So where is Varosha? Who determines where it is? What is meant when the UN and Turkey and others refer to Varosha? Why was Varosha made the focal point of so many political endeavors? So I won't go through the history of how many times Varosha has been offered again and again and again and again, but as Gerber pointed out, we'll all know in 2004 under the rejected Annan plan, Varosha would have fallen under the proposed Greek constituent state, and this would have led to the de jure, so no longer de facto partition, but in law partition of Famagausta, and in effect Turkify the majority of the land within the municipality of Famagausta, including, crucially, the port, which we'll come back to. So this map is from the Annan Plan of 2004, and you can see here that it cuts off short of the port. What else do I want? Oh, one other thing to mention, before the current round of calls for Varosha to be returned, people will remember around 2013, 2014, Varosha was part of another frantic round of meetings under the umbrella of bi-communal initiatives, talks between Greeks and Turkish Cypriots, and allowing the Greek Cypriots to return and play a part in the multi-billion-dollar regeneration of the ghost town, which would, not surprisingly, have seen the port administered by the Turkish occupation administration. So when we conducted our research, we came up with 5 findings, which I will go through very quickly. Firstly, the marked out area of Turkey as Varosha is composed of Ayos Nicolas, Ayia Pliada, Ayia Zonis, Stavros, Ayos Memnos, and so forth. And to all of you that know anything about Cyprus and what Turkey has been doing, continues to do in the occupied areas, you will immediately notice that these are all Christian names. So besides everything else, Varosha, and accepting Varosha as a defined name for that area, has in effect de-Christianized parishes in the occupied areas. Interestingly enough, a European Commission report in 2018 concluded that on the boundaries of Varosha, there has never been an agreement between the UN and the belligerent forces, in other words, the Turkish-occupied forces, on the exact ceasefire lines, as there was a ceasefire in 74, but there has never been a ceasefire agreement. So even at that point, I mean, the lines are so blurred, it's unbelievable how we can talk and negotiate about returning something that has no delineation. Second finding, Varosha is not a designated area under law, and it's not found in the official land registry of the Republic of Cyprus. As Glenis took us through, the response from the land registry, there is no clear correlation with the name Varosha and any specific administrative boundaries. There is also no mention of Varosha in the official documentation of the names of the Cyprus Permanent Committee for the Standardization of Geographical Names. Only Famagausta appears in vogue. The third key finding, in line with constructive ambiguity, and constructive ambiguity as a phrase brings back into the fora a well-known character in Cyprus history, that of Dr. Henry Kissinger, this is attributed to. And essentially, constructive ambiguity is about using ambiguous languages on purpose around sensitive issues in order to advance a political purpose. So there is no mistake about using Varosha and not knowing what Varosha is. It's done on purpose. We know that Varosha comes from the Turkish and so forth, so 4 conclusions from this point. Varosha is not an official NREL, parish or district or anything of the ethnically cleansed town of Famagusta. Varosha appears to have been manufactured to Turkify part of all the Christian place names, such as Agamemnon and the others I mentioned. Varosha's diverted attention away from the correct legal meaning and geographical extent of Famagusta and its parishes, as Glauco again went through in great detail. And finally, it diverts attention away from the prospect that under any bizonal, bicommunal, federal settlement, the proposed Turkish Cypriot constituent state will end up administrating the majority, if not the vast majority, of the land within the boundaries of the Famagausta municipality, including the strategic and commercial jewel, that of the port. The fourth finding is that Varosha, and this was our conclusion, is a construct of the British in collusion with Turkey. Since 1974, Turkey has not had any intention of surrendering the port or the surrounding areas. Documentation that we have found contains compelling evidence that shows Famagausta was clearly in the sights of Turkey well before the second invasion. The UK has effectively procured the segregation-based partition of Famagausta into Famagausta, as I said, which the Turks believe should go to any Turkish constituent state and be legally Turkish, and Varosha, which the British regard as Greek and under any bizonal bicommunal federation would be legally Greek. The same documentation indicates that the British have helped to procure this Orwellian transformation of new Famagausta, the term that was being used around the 70s, into Varosha, the term that has since been used since 1984. And, whenever you talk about Varosha, you'll find references to the UN Security Council Resolution 550 of 1984, as if it's the Holy Grail, which will liberate Cyprus, or at least prevent Turkey from settling in any further territory of the Republic of Cyprus. However, at closer inspection, and within its historical context, it's not as useful as it first appears. And that is also true of Security Council Resolution 789, which again Glauco has told us about, so I will skip through that. The reason why Security Council Resolution 550 is not useful is that there is no map annexed to the resolution to actually mark out the area that they are talking about. And knowing how very prudent British civil servants are, this was no mistake. It was not an accidental omission to not have within the resolution a map marking out what area you're actually talking about. As the penholder of the United Security Council resolution on Cyprus, the UK is holding great power and influence over the UN's position on ending the Turkish occupation of the Republic of Cyprus. And another fact that some of you may not be aware of, the fencing of this ghost town area of Famagausta was not actually completed until after the resolution was passed. So what were they talking about when they were signing it? We still do not know. And over the years, as we've heard, a succession of British ministerial statements have made it clear that in the eyes of the UK government, Famagausta is a city that is quite separate from the town or suburb of Varosha. And I've gone through everything about the bizonal bicommunal federation. And here I want to read out a statement from the then Minister of Europe, Dennis McShane, who Glauco points out was then a future inmate of HM prisons Belmarsh and Brixton. I have stood on the golden sands of the port of city of Famagausta, looking at the ghost town of Varosha. Under the last version of the Annan Plan, the Turkish Cypriots would have been able to operate Famagausta port as part of the Turkish Cypriot state, and Varosha would have been returned to its Greek Cypriot owners. I mean, that's a perfect summary of what the British actually would like us to do. So our final finding was that Famagausta is a bargaining chip for Turkey to reach several goals, including this acquisition of the port of Famagausta. I'm going to skip through a lot of what I want to say, but essentially, the opening up of Famagausta is really important. So, in the midst of the COVID pandemic in 2020, Erdogan took the decision to open the coast along the ghost town, as well as the main road that was then named after the late US President JFK, Kennedy Avenue. He planned a picnic there, but his plans were thwarted by Mother Nature. And he also shamelessly renamed Kennedy Avenue on the anniversary of JFK's assassination, after the general who led the invading Turkish troops, who's responsible for an array of crimes against humanity, which again has been mentioned by several speakers.
Theodora,
so this
can sort of end up now, actually.
I have 30 seconds.
Perfect.
This is a small part of this ghost town is now open for those who have the stomach to walk, and we heard from both Gosta and Nick who have been there. But really what I view this as is that it's pure and simple psychological warfare, which seeks to divide those Famagustans who have property within the fenced-off area and those other refugees and internally displaced persons whose homes happen to lie outside the fenced-off areas, either in Famagausta or, as Claire mentioned, in Hellenic and other areas. So our conclusion is that Famagausta is a British construct with Turkish collusion. It's been conveniently not marked out in a map in any of the 4 Security Council resolutions which call upon Turkey to refrain from resetting on the fence of Famagausta. It strategically excludes the port of Famagausta, which in all proposals to date would remain under Turkish control. So once the Republic of Cyprus signs and agrees to give this illusory state the last remaining pieces of the puzzle that they need, namely the port, which would also then give them direct trade, undoubtedly what will happen will the status quo will remain, the occupied areas will remain as a province of Turkey, or they may even self-determination, which, as Vasilis has pointed out, the Turkish Immovable Property Commission is doing a very good job of slowly but surely acquiring land from lawful title deed holders so as to be eventually the majority.
Theodora, we've got to stop it there. Thank you very much, Theodora. Thank you.
Τώρα ο Πούτιν μας άνοιξε μια πόρτα για να λύσουμε τον Κυπριακό αμέσως. Θα είναι να κάνουμε σωστά τη γραμμή μας. Του Ουκρανία, ο πρόεδρος ο Ζελένσκι έχει επαφές με τον Ερντογάν. Έχουμε επαφή με τον Ζελένσκι να πει στον Ερντογάν enough is enough. 49 years is enough. Let's not wait for another year, 50 years, μισός αιώνας. Έγινε ένα έγκλημα και φταίμε εμείς γιατί δεν πήραμε στο Διεθνές Δικαστήριο την Τουρκία και αυτό πρέπει να γίνει αμέσως. Τι κάνει η κυβέρνησή μας και οι πλούσιοι μας που έχουν λεφτά πολλά για να θυσιάσουν για την ελευθερία της Κύπρου, την ένωση των Κυπρίων όλων. Έλληνες, Τούρκοι, Αρμένοι, Μαρονίτες, μια ενωμένη Κύπρος και όχι reluctant United Republic of Cyprus. So let's call Zelensky to do the job for us. Thank you very much. Good night.
Thank you.